We're here to talk about second generation southwestern corn borer scouting. Typically, as we move into egg lay, we'll scout 2 leaves above the ear leaf to 4 leaves below the ear leaf, and this generally will give us about 80% of the egg lay. Southwestern corn borer tends to lay the majority of its eggs on the upper surface of the leaf, whereas the European corn borer tends to lay most of its egg lay on the underside of the leaf. The southwestern corn borer, after hatching out, will move to the ear zone to feed. And typically, we will sample by slicing down on both sides of the ear and pulling back the leaf collar to look for signs of feeding on this ear. We don't worry about destroying the plant that we're sampling. Therefore, you can go ahead and remove the ear. When scouting this corn, we inspect the base of the primary ear for signs of feeding by European corn borer and southwestern corn borer. As we can see, these signs here is evidence of feeding, and then we look at this small larvae here. We see that we have a European corn borer feeding in at the base of the ear. If you don't see a borer here, but you do see these signs of feeding, then we like to slice in to this base and look to see if we have a borer tunneling up and down the shaft of this ear. And if we see that, we record which species we're finding. Many times we'll have a jelly-like substance here at the base where the corn ear has reacted to that feeding, and that is another sign of larval feeding by one of these 2 species. Also inspect the secondary ears for the same kind of feeding damage. Here we see feeding from either European or southwestern. We also see a tunnel in the shank of this ear, and it's not uncommon to find the southwestern or European feeding up actually in this ear zone and damaging this small ear, which will never develop anyway. But again, it's where we inspect for them. After we've inspected the base, we also like to cut the secondary ear in half and look for signs of feeding in this ear. In this ear. Now, this feeding at the top of the ear has been caused by corn earworm and is not due to southwestern corn borer or European corn borer. After we have inspected the primary ear and the first secondary ear, we go on ahead and work all the way down the plant, pulling back leaf collars and looking for signs of feeding or tunneling into the stalk, the primary stalk. And so we will go all the way down to the base of the plant. We'll pull back the leaf collar all the way on each side so we can look for signs of feeding and holes that are tunneled into the stalk. Here we have a southwestern corn borer that was in approximately the 3rd instar stage. It has begun to bore into the stalk, and so this one started in at the node, which it will commonly do, but also sometimes it will bore in down farther on the stalk than at the node. This one has just started its tunnel, and we have sliced back to show that there is a southwestern corn borer here. Typically, on controlling the southwestern corn borer, we like to target our applications for egg hatch to small instar larvae. The small larvae, again, move in behind the leaf collars to feed, but they will move in and out of these zones and move lower on the plant to bore in. This is our time that we have a chance to control these. Once the 3rd or 4th instar has bored into the stalk, then control becomes much more difficult and our percent control drops. Therefore, from egg hatch to when it bores into the stalk, we have about 7 to 10 days. And after that, we've missed our opportunity to have any high percent of control. One of the reasons that the southwestern corn borer is a more important pest for us than the European corn borer is the fact that it girdles the plants at the end of the season Typically, the stalk tunneling is much more extensive from southwestern corn borer than it is from European corn borer. Therefore, we consider it to be a much greater pest for us than the European corn borer. At the end of the season, the southwestern corn borer moves to the base of the stalk, tunnels in, and goes right down to the apex of the root to form what we call a hibernaculum, where it is going to overwinter. And after it has prepared this spot, it moves back up and with its mandibles cuts a smooth circle on the inside of the stalk. As the stalk begins to dry down close to harvest, a strong wind can break it off at the point of girdling, and we end up with many lodge plants in the field where the southwestern corn borer has not been controlled. If we know a field has not been treated for southwestern corn borer but has them in it, we recommend to the grower that he try to harvest his corn at a higher % moisture. And if he can do this, many times he can harvest the crop prior to what we call significant girdling. And he may have 5 to 10% of the plants out there girdled, but if he waits, he might reach in the 80% zone of girdling if he lets it dry down to, say, below 18%.